Hello, glorious beauties. So lately I've seen some articles and books trying to disclose yoga as a more modern art and not traditional. And they're sort of judging yoga as not being traditional. And so I want to make this video to say yoga is and isn't traditional. So there's two things that I want to look at, and hopefully this video won't be super long. Now, one of the things we're going to look at is this monk that lived in the 5th and 6th century. His name was Bodhidharma. So Bodhidharma probably came from somewhere around Kerala in India and moved all the way up to China into the Shaolin Temple. So this must have taken quite a fair while. And if you look at that distance, you'll see how far Kerala is from the Shaolin Temple. Now, what Bodhidharma noticed is that the Shaolin monks couldn't defend themselves, and they were very fidgety during meditation. So what he did is he showed them what was later claimed to be yoga and martial art style exercises. So breathing exercises, exercises to be able to defend themselves, and so on and so forth. Now, there's a martial art that was prohibited to be practiced in India, which was Kerala Payattu, and has actually only resurfaced in the past few years. So when I look at movements from Kerala Payattu, and when I look at some of the movements from Shaolin Kung Fu, they're very similar. Now, what's also very similar is that there's a lot of yoga asanas. There's a lot of the back bends, the lunge poses, and all this type of stuff. So there was a yoga style exercises being practiced in the 5th and 6th century. So the physical aspect has to be somewhat traditional. But then we have to look at this book called The Science of Yoga, which is one of the first books written on the subjects of yoga. And the only yoga asana or yoga pose that they talk about in the book is Padmasana, which is something like this, except the legs are more deeply crossed into the lotus sit. Why do they only talk about Padmasana? Because initially yoga was just a meditative art. Now, the reason Bodhidharma showed the Shaolin monks these yoga exercises is because they couldn't meditate. So at some point, also in India, they realized that to get to the actual meaning of yoga, to be able to connect mind and body and to be able to focus in Padmasana, you had to do some sort of physical exercises. Now, one of the things that they try and claim on yoga as it not being a modern, a traditional art, is that they borrowed movements from the Brits, because the Brits obviously settled in to India. And so the Indians borrowed a lot of gymnastic moves from them. But this doesn't mean that because they borrowed, that the Indians weren't already vigorously exercising. The Indians have been exercising since the dawn of time. Actually, we've all been exercising since the dawn of time. And even in the West, there's a new art that surfaced in the past like 30, 40, max 50 years called the neuro-linguistic programming, which is another thing that's trying to connect mind-body experience, which is a lot like yoga. So the only thing that's really changed is the terms and the identity of the terms, right? So Kerala Payattu was a physical exercise, martial arts could be just a physical exercise, and they combined the mental aspect of it, which was yoga, right? So instead of calling it like Kerala Payattu and yoga, or Kung Fu and yoga, they took some of the asanas, they took some of the mental principles, and it's become just yoga. Now, the thing is, what's modern about yoga, and this is true that it's modern, is all the therapeutic stuff and the creative sequencing. But there's nothing wrong with novelty. I mean, if a new iPhone comes out, everybody wants it. A new Mac comes out, everybody wants it. But if a new sequence or movement comes out, or a new idea that's related to a traditional art, then everybody sort of judges it. And the thing is, things are meant to evolve. So even though there's always going to be fragments of tradition in what you're doing, it's always going to be different. The teacher's presenting it to you, you're always going to present it from a different light. So the truth is yoga modern or tradition? And the answer is yes and no. Movement has been around since the dawn of time, and the idea of connecting mind and body has been around since the samurais, the Greeks, and probably even before that. And then the real question is yoga modern or traditional? Does it matter? It's good, it brings people together, people like it. So even if it was created just yesterday, yoga is here to stay, and it's an amazing art. Namaste.